For years, historians and science fiction writers have looked at alternate histories or alternate ways events could have happened. Examples, Civil War historians have often asked, what would have happened if the Confederate Army under Robert E. Lee had won the Battle of Gettysburg? Or 100 years later, what if President John Kennedy had used a standard limousine in Dallas rather than a convertible? Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our welcome guests today. Today I want to talk about another what if scenario that would be closer to our hearts than those big questions of history. Today I want to talk about what it would look like if we counted words in our Toastmasters meetings instead of measuring length of time. I want to go through what led me down this path to think about this idea, what it possibly could look like in a meeting, and maybe some implications of doing that in a meeting. For the past 2 months, I've been taking a class in New Testament theology, and one of the projects in the class is to write a summary of each book of the New Testament, and not only a summary, but it has constraints on the number of words. The longer books are 250-word summaries, and the shorter books are 50-word summaries. And as I said, I have an engineering background, and for me, this has been a challenge. I never have written this much in my life until now. I mean, I've been used to homework sets and problems and tests with problems that need a calculator, and here to have to just sit and write has been a challenge. So I thought, well, what would it look like in a Toastmasters Club if we stopped looking at time and started looking at the number of words that are said and use that as our measurement? Did a little research last night, and the average person speaks between 125 and 150 words a minute. So in a 7-minute speech, that's 900 to 1,000 words. So that's a decent sized essay when it's all said and done, that you're presenting that many words. I didn't realize it would be that many words to do a speech like this. So what would it look like if we started counting words in a meeting like this? Well, we might need a new role in a meeting. We have a timer today that measures the amount of time we take. We might need somebody to do a word count, or maybe a worder to parallel with timer. We would also probably need an app to do that. And this is not outside the realm of possibility. Today we have software that automatically transcribes speeches into a transcript. We have software that does translations into other languages. There should be software today that counts the number of words, so we don't have to have people trying to keep track of 125 to 150 words a minute. Let the software do it. And it might end some arguments too about how many words have spoken. You can blame the software for it, which we do all the time. Well, other ways this could change our meetings. If we were tracked on the number of words, it might mean that we have to be more prepared coming up here to speak than if we were just asked to do a speech off at a very short notice. It might mean a written draft. It might mean a more extensive outline than we're used to presenting. It might mean more preparation time to have to get that speech within 900 to 1,000 words, say. It might mean, again, more preparation time. And there might be ways that people find ways to work around this idea of having to stay within number of words. You might see more use of PowerPoint because everybody says a picture is worth 1,000 words. Yes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. That's what they at least said. But if you had a PowerPoint, you could maybe put some of that information on the screen and not necessarily include that in your verbal speech. Another thought might be that you have to use maybe hand signals instead of saying my first point, my second point. Maybe you have to say to save each point. Instead of saying the words, I'm going, my second point is, my third point is, use hand signals to maybe gesture some of those ideas as to going into those next areas. And there are risks to doing this, of course. Any change has risk. Again, I mentioned it may take more time to prepare a speech like this than like I've done here. I would maybe need a real handout rather than this 3x5 set of notes here that I'm using. So it would take more time, more preparation. Figure out, am I getting close to what I need to say for the word count for this speech? It might make it harder to bring in a last minute substitution or last minute replacement for a speech like this, because they wouldn't have had time to come up with a speech of that length. I think there's some issues too when we look at the nature of public speaking itself. It's been said that there's often 3 speeches behind every speech. There's a speech that we prepare. We practice, we prepare. And then we actually deliver the speech. And often that speech is not necessarily turns out the way we thought it was going to in our preparation. And when we're done and we sit down and we get the evaluation, we realize there's a 3rd speech in there, and that's the speech I wish I would have given or I could have given. I mean, and I'm not, this is not joking. I mean, this I believe is I've had this in my experience. I prepare a speech, I deliver it, and I come back and look at it, and they're all a little bit different in a lot of ways. And yet, if we're to the point when we're doing a reading of a prepared speech, all those kind of come together and condense together, and they become probably all the same. That what we practice with the written speech and delivered is the same as what we do today. And I think there's risk in that I learned from this by going through the speeches and like, okay, I did this when I was up in front, and then I wish I would have done this differently. So I think there's a risk that we lose some of that impromptu ability in speaking. And there are times that I found that an ad lib during a speech, which I hadn't thought of coming until I get up here and start speaking, an ad lib does work. Sometimes it doesn't work and it falls flat, like one of my jokes earlier today has fallen flat. But there are times that ad libs do work. And an ad lib might be hard to put into a written speech like this. Because sometimes I receive sometimes an idea that comes in and does make the speech go better than I had ever even thought of before. So I think there's a risk of losing some of that ability to add on the fly, ability to think and add something that extends the speech, where we might lose that when we're keeping track of words. And again, we probably could never even talk about this until now, where we have enough software to do an automatic word count like this. So maybe that's a sign of progress, that we could even begin to think of something like that, to do an automatic count of words and to track people by that. And of course, that software would have to be adept enough to remove ahs, ums, and other filler words, so they wouldn't count against your count. But compared to what I talked about earlier, changes to history, changes to the flow of time, this could happen. We could do a speech someday or a meeting someday where we are actually counting words instead of looking at time. Until then, I think we need to commend ourselves for what we're actually doing up here. If we're actually doing a 7-minute speech and doing a 900 to 1,000 word equivalent essay, that's a lot of work. And I think we should commend ourselves for going ahead and preparing that, sharing that, and receiving feedback on how that's gone. So until that time, give yourselves credit, and who knows, maybe someday we'll do a meeting theme where we're just counting words rather than times. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.